Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 11. We have officially gotten more episodes than I have fingers. I'm a little sad.
Uh, yeah, I mean, you do have appendages to go to 11.
Yeah, but we're not going to do that because I don't want to get banned.
Oh.
Um,
Well, you have toes? What are you talking about?
I know what appendages you were referring to, and
Oh,
toast was not it.
I can count to 21.
Yep. So, with that being said, hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 11 of the Lost One podcast. My name is Shenzo the Lost. I'm your host. Joining me today, we have Shoshima
Yo.
and SamuraiNoodlez. And this
Yep.
time, I readied the freaking image so I can actually point in the right direction and not get all backwards like I did last week. So,
Professional streamer.
yeah, just small victories. And you can read my shirt. It's not backwards
Oh.
anymore. So,
Don't hate. Don't
yeah,
hate.
don't hate. Second victory.
Huh.
So, yeah, but anyway, guys, welcome on in. Last week we talked about Magic the Gathering, which was a lot of fun. This week we're going to resume Lost in the MCU, and we're going to cover Captain America. And hopefully this time there won't be a 20-minute distraction in the form of the DC Extended Universe, like there was for the Thor episode.
I wonder who would have started that.
I know. Whoever did is kind of a jerk. And whoever let me go off for 20 minutes is also a jerk. Because clearly it's not my fault.
No, it wasn't my fault. I apparently wasn't here.
Yeah.
What was the last episode?
So, with that being said, though, we do have a small update on the Ezra Miller situation. I figure we should bring it up since I talked about it. But basically,
Wait, hold on. Wait, whoa.
Yeah, should we stop him here?
We have a 20-minute distraction. Should we stop you here?
It's not going to be 20 minutes. It's literally just an update, and we're moving on.
Okay.
Okay.
Ezra Miller apparently is getting help, counseling, something. So, best of luck to them. Obviously, they've been all over the map, as we talked about exclusively during the Thor episode.
Mm-hmm.
But, again, it's hard to say what's kind of going on. We obviously don't know the full picture, but that is kind of the last update. What we're not going to do is talk about all the weird things WB Discovery is doing with HBO, which that will probably have to cover in its own podcast episode, which we might do next week. So we'll
I
talk
saw a meme
that
about
there.
HBO Max the other day, because I guess Dragon Ball's on there.
Not for long. So,
Okay, but yeah, it's like, we'll fight
Probably.
somewhere where nobody's at. HBO Max.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, so we're not going to really get into that, but since we did cover a lot of like what's been going on with WB Discovery and the DCEU during the Thor episode, I just figured it would be good to follow up on that with the latest news that Ezra Miller has apparently is seeking professional help. So best of luck to them, and yeah, that's it.
Yeah, hopefully they get the help they need.
Yeah, hopefully, and hopefully all their legal troubles will get resolved because yeah, they're still in really hot water, and I'm just not going to forget that. So. Okay, but anyway, yeah, so that's the brief update, like I said. Wasn't 20 minutes. But yeah, so today we want to talk Captain America, which will be the final movie in Phase 1 before the big team up.
Before the big one.
Yeah, before the big one. And, obviously, at this point, we have already talked Iron Man, Hulk, Iron Man 2, and Thor, although our Thor episode, admittedly, was a bit more rushed than others. But regardless, I think we covered it pretty well. We hit all the high notes anyway. So let's dive into Captain America. And Captain America came out in 2011. As we talked about, it was the last movie before, to kind of set up this Avengers film that at this point I think everyone knew was coming. It had been teased several times, and obviously, Iron Man and Hulk and Thor all play a key role in the founding of the Avengers. Captain America is usually put in as one of the founding members, but fun fact, in the comics, Captain America is not one of the founding members of the Avengers. He actually came in later and was given quote-unquote founder status. But yeah, so a little fun fact about that is that Captain America is not actually one of the original founding members of the Avengers.
Huh.
So
Would have fooled me.
yeah, right. But in most subsequent media, like he is almost always, if not a founder, he is directly tied into the Avengers. He's usually seen as their leader, along with Tony Stark. But yeah, Captain America in the comics, Steve Rogers is not one of the founding members in the comics. I believe he was given founder status after Hulk left. So, which was, I think, like an issue or two after. I think it might have been like Avengers 3.
So wait, is it like, oh, Hulk's gonna leave, we have to give somebody this founder status?
Kinda. It's also that he's Captain America, and, you know, Captain America is just kind of like how he's portrayed in the MCU, is kind of the moral center, considered to be one of the world's first superheroes.
Okay, it just seemed weird when you're like, well, Hulk's leaving, so we gotta give it to somebody.
Yeah,
let's give it to America's ass.
We'll probably talk a bit more about that in the Avengers episode, but long story short is that in the comics, Hulk was not trusted by any of his teammates, so he left. Because Hulk is kind of a loner anyway.
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah.
And, you know, we've seen that. I believe that same story has been told in, like, I want to say it's like Earth's Mightiest Heroes was a cartoon in, like, the late 2000s, early 2010s. But, you know, they redid the story there where Hulk, you know, basically leaves. You know, he helps found the Avengers. He sticks around for a little while, but then he leaves when he realizes that all his teammates are afraid of him.
And he's like, I don't need you guys anyway.
Yeah, so, you know, but Hulk is, you know, again, like, he's a loner. He's also a hard character to write for. So they kind of just gave Hulk's, like, founding position, so to speak, to Captain America.
Yeah.
And, you know, again, Cap's a good fit, and it's not to say that Hulk never rejoined the Avengers. He has, you know, he's been a member several times. But just kind of like what Hulk will do at the end of Age of Ultron, Hulk will kind of go off and do his own thing. You know, because he realizes that other people are afraid of him. And, you know, it's unfortunate, but that's also deeply entwined in Hulk lore is, you know, he has, like, the U.S. Army, you know, chasing him, like, for the vast majority of his comic book history.
See, that's what I remember from the Hulk cartoon back in the day.
Yeah. So, General Ross.
Which cartoon?
I don't know, the 90s Hulk cartoon.
That was the 90s Hulk cartoon? All I remember is, like, what, that 60s one?
Yeah, there was a 90s one, too. Yeah, it wasn't as big, but I distinctly remember it because they introduced the Gray Hulk and the Green Hulk, and they would portray, like, both of these Hulks fighting each other for control of Banner's psyche. It was pretty interesting. It's an interesting cartoon. I don't know how well it's aged. I haven't watched it in a long time.
Oh, yeah, me neither.
I do remember it being a thing. But anyway, Captain America. So this film is obviously coming off of the major success of Iron Man, and then kind of the not as successful Hulk and Thor movies, although Thor, I think, was also very successful.
Yeah, I think, you know, maybe not as much as Iron Man, but still successful.
Yeah, I actually think the Hulk movie, out of the 5 first Phase 1 movies that are not Avengers, was the worst performing, I think.
I wouldn't be surprised.
But I think Iron Man 1 and 2 both did really well. I think Thor did okay. I don't think it passed Iron Man, but
yeah,
Thor did.
Isn't that also Universal?
Yeah, it was a Universal, but it's also in the MCU. We talked about that during the Hulk episode, so we don't want to dive into that status again too much, especially for a Captain America podcast. But so Captain America had, you know, kind of big shoes to fill. But of course, the advantage that Captain America had over even Thor or, you know, Iron Man is that Captain America is a known name. Aside from Spider-Man and maybe like Deadpool or the X-Men, Captain America is one of the most famous names in Marvel Comics. And his comic book history, I believe he's one of the 3 oldest comic book characters still, like, being written in modern comics. And 2 of those other ones belong to DC. Batman and Superman, I think, are also 2 of the canonically, like, or not canonically, but, like, the oldest and longest lived characters. Batman, I think, and Superman both debuted in, like, I want to say it was, like, the late 20s, early 30s. And Captain America, of course, really rose to prominence during World War II.
What? You don't say.
Yeah, I think that the actual character of Captain America originated a bit earlier than World War II. I don't remember exactly.
I remember reading or there was some sort of video. I don't know if it was Desk of Death Battle or something.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they talk about they repurposed him in World War II.
Yeah, and that's really where Captain America became famous.
Yeah.
He had existed prior to that. I don't even know if he was an original Marvel creation. Like he wasn't created by, I think, Jack Kirby or Stan Lee, for example.
Yeah, I don't remember for sure.
But I don't think so. Maybe I'm wrong on that. But Cap is one of the oldest comic book characters, and again, he really kind of got refurbished in World War II, and Marvel ended up either getting the rights or acquiring the rights at some point. I think that's what happened, and they introduced him to the Avengers. I believe it was in the 1960s. So, and Cap's kind of story is very similar to what we see in this movie. He wants to join the military. He takes part in a experiment led by a defecting scientist to create a super soldier. And during it, the scientist is assassinated. Captain America becomes the only known super soldier, and he uses his amazing powers to go against the Red Skull and Hydra of the Nazi Party, and kicks their ass, and then ends up sacrificing himself and being frozen for X number of years. And of course, obviously, as that story's been retold, as time has gone on, the time he spent under the ice gets longer and longer.
Hence why it's X. It's always a variable.
Yeah, it was originally, I think, like 20 years he was frozen, roughly. It was like 10 or 15 years. And then, it became 20, then 30, then 40, then 50, then 60. And then, of course, in the MCU, which we'll see at the end of this movie, he was frozen for 70 years. So, with that said, the movie itself is pretty much a almost is kind of like a World War II like war film, right? But it introduces superheroes, namely Captain America and his Howling Commandos. So the Howling Commandos, of course, are very comic book famous for not only associating with Captain America, but fun fact: the original leader of the Howling Commandos, Nick Fury. Which did not transfer over into the MCU, but
because that one made him an old dude by the time the Avengers came around.
Yeah, absolutely. But even still, I mean, I think that the Fury in the MCU, I think he was born on January 4th in like 1950, so he's not like.
No, I mean it wouldn't be a stretch, but to be a leader of the Howling Commandos, what, like 20 years before you were born, like it's a little bit of time.
Yeah.
So just a little bit.
But yeah, it's he was so fun fact about the Howling Commandos is a lot of their roster in this movie, namely Dum Dum Dugan, is kind of one of the most famous ones of the Howling Commandos. But he appears in it, obviously. Bucky was a big part in that. Although in this movie they considerably aged up Bucky. Bucky was Captain America's youthful sidekick, kind of like Robin to Batman.
Yeah, he's supposed to be like...
He's like a teenager.
Figure,
Yeah, and Cap is more like a father figure or a big brother figure.
Yeah, but they kind of swapped it in this one, didn't they?
A little bit. So initially, Steve is obviously sick. He has, they list off, there's a scene in the movie where they list off, everything he has, and it's asthma was one of them, and that was, the big one, but... He's this short, scrawny kid, and, he always, picks fights and tries to stand up what's right, but he tries to sign up for the army, 7 different times across, different recruiting stations. And he gets turned away every time due to his health issues. And Bucky is, the one who comes to his rescue. He's the bigger, taller dude. And, he's always looking after Steve, as we see in a lot of flashbacks, from, the Winter Soldier and his time in Civil War. But it's definitely one of those things where, Bucky is in this case, is kind of like the older brother figure to Steve. And Bucky gets shipped out, of course. And Steve gets recruited to the Super Soldier program. And as already talked about in the comics, unfortunately, there's a German spy working for Hydra who infiltrates the experiment right after it's proven successful, and kills the scientist, whose name is escaping me at the moment, but I think it's Esker or something like that.
Scientist dude number 1.
But basically, Steve, his first action as Captain America is to chase down this Hydra spy and prevent him from escaping. And of course, in very typical war fashion, the Hydra chews on cyanide and kills himself.
No, you don't say.
Yeah. So.
Wow.
In the meantime, though, we're also introduced to Peggy Carter, who plays a pretty important role in the comics, but unfortunately, her role was largely relegated to background and flashbacks in the MCU after this movie. She did get her own spin-off, Agent Carter, but unfortunately, Agent Carter was canceled, I believe, after 2 seasons, and unfortunately, never really got the respect I think it deserves. Haley Atwell, though, who plays Sharon Carter, or Peggy Carter, rather, is still a fan favorite, and they brought her back for several cameos, one of which we will not talk about on this podcast.
Okay.
Because Samurai still has not seen that movie.
Wait, you haven't seen it yet?
Dude, I just saw Sonic 2 last night.
Yeah.
I have not seen Sonic 2 yet.
Yeah, so...
I did watch Dragon Ball already, though.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen Dragon Ball.
I took Cooper to it. He fell asleep. I don't know if that means something.
He still might be a bit too young, but hey, good try.
But,
So...
Yeah.
Yeah, but Peggy will end up playing a really big role in the world, and we'll talk a bit about Peggy's role a little later, just like we'll talk about Bucky's role.
Yeah, I did see a thing where I guess Peggy, like her like touching his chest and being like all enamored was actually like improvised.
Yeah, it was.
Which is pretty dope, like learning after the fact that it's just like...
Yeah, well, one of the things, especially about the early MCU, is there was a lot of like improvised stuff. I believe that Robert Downey Jr.'s famous line, "I am Iron Man," was off the cuff.
That was off the cuff.
A lot of the scenes you'll see with Robert Downey are actually off the cuff, where like he would hide snacks.
Yeah, I was going to mention that, but that's for the next podcast.
Yeah, so there was a lot of stuff like that.
No, his blueberries.
No, so like...
Wasn't the shawarma thing also kind of like... let's roll with it.
I think that line, when he was like recovering in Avengers, and we'll talk about this more, but I think that also might have been improv.
And then they're like, well, we've talked about it so much, let's go.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so Haley Atwell obviously plays a big role. Of course, you have yet another Chris in the MCU.
What? Too many Chris's.
Chris Evans, who is our second after Chris Hemsworth.
Wait, wasn't Chris Evans Human Torch?
He was, originally, yeah. So Chris Evans, fun fact, played the Human Torch in Fox's Fantastic Four. The first one, not the second reboot.
Yeah.
But, yeah, he was brought back and into the role of Steve Rogers. Of course, Haley Atwell, and I'm trying to think of Sebastian Stan. There we go. Who played Bucky. They also had a pretty really colorful cast. Hugo Weaving, I believe, plays the Red Skull. And he's a pretty well-established name. It's kind of unfortunate, though, that I guess he really didn't end up enjoying the role, which is part of the reason why Red Skull never made a return until Infinity War. Which he was played by somebody else.
Oh, he was? Oh.
Yeah. Hugo Weaving did not return. Someone else came back and played the Red Skull.
Well, they did a good enough job. I didn't notice.
Yeah. So
under like all that face makeup.
But even the voice was still pretty on point.
Yeah.
So
I think it was close / it'd been so long.
Yeah.
I haven't.
I was gonna say, at that point it had been how many years between
10 years, right? Or almost.
And then I'm trying to... I mean, it had been... Because Infinity War came out, I want to say it was in 2018. Because I think Endgame was 2019. So it was, 8 years apart.
Yeah.
From when they debuted, anyway. So, yeah.
No, it'd be 6 years, right? Because it was 2012 for the Avengers?
Well, no, but you got to remember, Hugo Weaving appeared in Captain America, which was
Captain...
2011.
11.
Yeah. So it was 8 years. It was a seven years apart, I think, between those characters. So yeah, it had been a long time at that point.
I didn't pick up that it was a different actor. So good on that actor, whoever your name is.
Yeah.
Because I have no idea.
And again, we don't do any research prior. We don't have notes or anything. So we're just, this is all
this nerd just knows everything off the top of his head.
Yeah, hey, what can I say? I love Marvel and I love the MCU. So, but I'm trying to think, I can't believe I can't remember his name, but he plays the Colonel. And he's like Tommy Lee Jones. That's it.
Oh yeah,
Tommy Lee Jones.
How'd you?
Yeah.
I couldn't remember at first, then I was like, oh wait a minute, I remembered Men in Black.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was Tommy Lee Jones. But yeah, they did. When you look at that cast, it's like, man, that's pretty good. Like obviously, Sebastian Stan, Chris Evans, and Haley Atwell have since gone on to become really big names in the MCU.
Yeah,
they're all considered fan favorites.
Yeah, and I really like Sebastian Stan as Winter Soldier personally.
I do too, and he played a great Bucky, and his role in Falcon and Winter Soldier, he has really good chemistry with pretty much like everybody.
Yeah, he just seems like a cool dude.
Yeah, he really does, and Chris Evans is actually Captain America. Like, if you ever follow him like on Twitter,
yeah, I know he played Captain America. Yes.
No, but I mean like in real life, he like embodies like the spirit of Captain America, and it's pretty great to see.
And he still has America's ass.
Yes, and he does have America's ass, which we will talk about at length, I'm sure.
Oh, a lot of
when we cover Endgame in
and or Girth. I don't know which one.
Several weeks from now. Assuming this podcast isn't canceled by then.
That'll probably be my fault.
Probably, but we'll address that another time.
3, 2, 1, not it.
Yep. So anyway, really good cast, and of course, as we've already talked about, Captain America. Hilariously enough, they don't just like throw him in. Colonel Phillips, who's played by Tommy Lee Jones, is not impressed with Rogers. Rogers was not his pick. He was the scientist pick, and he basically goes to work for propaganda, where he performs with a bunch of singing, dancing girls and punches Adolf Hitler in the mouth.
Yeah, he's basically like a dancing monkey, like the first part of the movie.
Yeah, and he actually draws like himself as a monkey in one of his scenes when he's like going.
Is that where I got that reference from? Probably. So
yeah, he's like a monkey on a unicycle holding an umbrella. He's actually sketching that like when he's on like one of the tours, and he's trying to raise money for bonds. That's like his whole thing. And that's, hilariously enough, where the whole Captain America gimmick comes from.
Yeah, in the MCU at least.
Yeah, so he ends up, obviously defying orders to go break out Bucky and his squad who were captured.
So wait, Captain America defying orders has been a thing since the first movie, basically.
Mm-hmm. That's why, like, a lot of people who have an issue with, like, Cap, like, going AWOL against the government and S.H.I.E.L.D. in Civil War and Winter Soldier respectively, it's like the dude literally like got his position and his hero status.
That's been his whole like character. Yeah,
because he literally defied an order to mount a single-handed rescue mission into an enemy base in Italy. Like, it's literally what he did, and the only reason he wasn't punished is because he didn't get himself killed in the process.
Yeah, you didn't die, I guess. Fuck it, seems legit, dude. Like,
did you die?
Yeah. Well, not only that, but he rescued the entire 107th and captured like a whole bunch of Hydra weapons.
Exactly.
So it's like you can't argue with results type thing. And it's funny too because there's an interesting parallel in Winter Soldier with Nick Fury, who does the same thing. And we'll talk about that when we break down Winter Soldier. But there's a very interesting parallel, of course, with like how Nick Fury became director of S.H.I.E.L.D., where he basically did the same thing. He defied orders to deliver results. So, different methodology, because Fury's way more ruthless and less idealistic than Cap ever was. But, he's, it's kind of an interesting parallel there.
Yeah.
So, as you can imagine, Cap joins the war effort and finds a lot of success. He becomes a hero overnight, as well as a propaganda machine. And, eventually becomes very respected among pretty much everybody, including, I think it was, did I say General Phillips? I think it was Colonel Phillips.
I thought you said Colonel.
Maybe, yeah, okay.
I don't know
Hopefully
anymore.
I got it right. But I think it's Colonel Phillips. But, even his once naysayer, who didn't want him to be the man to get the super soldier serum. And, of course, Peggy, which that'll become a very interesting, controversial thing, much later in Endgame with time travel shenanigans.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Cap eventually, goes against the Red Skull. He stops the Red Skull, who's going to use this high-tech bomber to, basically drop high-powered, Tesseract-powered weapons all across the major Allied cities, and has to unfortunately put it in the water, and because Cap doesn't know how to fly very well, which we will also get addressed later in the MCU by I believe it was Rhodey in a deleted scene. We'll needle Cap about that. But with that being said, he is supposed to have a dance with Peggy. That never happens because he crashes the the high powered plane into the frozen tundra.
And then it gets put on ice.
Yep, and gets frozen solid. And at the end of the movie, of course, there's a after credit scene where Cap wakes up in what appears to be a room, a hospital room from the 1940s, with a baseball game playing. But in a very hilarious mistake for a top secret spy organization, they are playing a game that took place before he went under the ice. And one that allows Cap to realize he's been had because he was actually at that game.
Joke's on you, I've already been there.
Yeah. So he breaks out and finds himself in modern day Times Square, where Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. Quickly surround him as he's gawking at the unfamiliar landscape. And it ends with, "You've been asleep, Cap, for almost 70 years. And credits.
Please tell me it was exactly 69 years.
I don't know if it was exactly, but it would have been pretty close.
It would have been nice.
Yeah. So, yeah. So anyway, that's kind of the brief summary of Captain America. Obviously, we're not going to do a detailed film review. So real quick, Samurai, you at this point have been watching the MCU. Your first real entry into it was Thor.
Yeah.
What did you think about Captain America: The First Adventure?
Never saw it.
Oh.
No, I'm kidding.
No, I'm a fucking liar.
All right, everybody. I'm sorry. We're gonna move on. Skip past Samurai. No, please go ahead, Samurai.
So I did watch it. It was kind of in passing because at this point I was just like, all right, I'm kind of in this.
Yeah.
So I watched it the same way that I watch, quite honestly, a lot of things where it's like it's all in the background, but I'm kind of doing some work. Oh,
Yeah.
Hey, look, plot point here that looks really cool. All right, bang, 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 some action scenes. Oh, plot point. So a lot of details I completely glossed over.
Yeah.
And I know this is kind of getting into the second one, but to show some details I glossed over, I completely forgot all about Bucky in general.
I mean,
he's pretty important later on.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he became. Yeah, but that's what I mean. The second movie came around, and I was just like, "Who's he again?"
Oh man, don't let Kayla hear you say that.
Dude, I mean, she already knows that.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying, don't let her hear you say that again, because she'll give you shit for it. But Bucky is her man.
Sebastian Stan is a pretty good looking man, not gonna lie.
Yeah, no,
he is.
I mean,
he's got the tall, dark, and handsome.
Yeah, and even just with his personality too.
That's true.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. Later on, his role grows on me, and it's like, oh, haha, cool, I get it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I had to really think about it, and I was just like, oh yeah, that's right. That whole train scene happened, and
yeah,
bye Bucky.
Which I honestly glossed over, but yeah, I mean, Bucky ends up getting lost. He's thought dead. In this train scene, while they're trying to get Zola, who's the chief scientist of Hydra. So
yeah,
it was a pretty big thing. And obviously Zola will play a much larger role later. A smaller role than he does in the comics, but a large role nonetheless.
Yeah, enough for him to still be annoying.
Yep.
But yeah, no, I mean that's pretty much my summary of that one. It was just kind of it was on. I watched it. Whether or not I remember most of it, enough to remember that plot point that Bucky fell off that train.
Yeah. So hey, that's good. So Shoshima, how about you?
What, my first impressions of the movie?
First impressions, how you felt about it,
or how I felt? Yeah, I liked it. It was a good, introductory. Obviously the first Avenger because he was in the past.
Yes. Dun dun dun.
What a twist.
Yes.
And
this was an M. Night Shyamalan movie. It didn't suck.
Yeah, exactly. What was the twist of this one? It didn't suck.
Yeah.
But no, I thought it was a good, World War. It was still really upbeat compared to most war movies per se.
Oh yeah, it definitely wasn't as graphic for sure.
Yeah, they were still trying to cater towards the Marvel audience.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I thought it was very fun. Chris Evans fits the role too well.
Yeah, he really does. Sebastian Stan, as we've already talked about,
yeah,
perfect casting.
Really well.
Haley Atwell's Peggy Carter was incredible.
Yeah, so the casting was really good.
Yeah, you're never gonna go wrong with Tommy Lee Jones. Especially if you cast him in old, cantankerous role.
Yeah, just grumpy old man. Yeah. Fucking perfect.
Yeah, Tommy Lee Jones.
And I'll never forget him as Two-Face, honestly, personally.
Yeah, that was definitely a highlight. Although apparently he hated working with Jim Carrey.
I'm not too surprised. Like hindsight.
Yeah.
Seeing how Jim Carrey's developed as a human being.
Yeah.
He can be pretty weird and eccentric, from my understanding.
Yeah, and Tommy Lee Jones is gruff and kind of no nonsense.
Yeah. But yeah, I watched Batman Forever way too much, so that's where I remember him from.
Not enough.
And
just ask Darth Canucks.
Probably not enough. One I know I watched too much because I literally broke the VHS was Lion King.
Lion King, yeah.
But that's beside the point. What's sad, the fact that I said it again or that he knows it?
Yeah,
And so yeah, no, I thought it was a great movie, great casting, and I thought it was interesting, having this after the fact, and then so we already know the Avengers is gonna be a thing, so the after credit scene just makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely. You had to get Cap into modern times somehow, right? You had to, so you knew that was coming. But
exactly, but as opposed to if this was the first movie,
yeah,
it
wouldn't have had nearly as big of an impact.
Exactly,
because at this point you have to remember Nick Fury and Shield have already been established. You have obviously the hints have already been there from I want to talk to you about the Avengers Initiative, and the fact that Tony learns he's not qualified at the end of Iron Man 2, except his suit is, but he's not.
We'll take your suit, but not you big fuck.
Pretty much. But yeah, it's I'm glad to hear that both of you have enjoyed it, because I know that Captain America: The First Avenger is not the best of the original Phase 1 films, but to me it's number 2. Iron Man is the only one, in my opinion, that's better than this one. And I think we've talked about how kind of if you were to rank Phase 1 films, I have my ranking, and I'm not counting the Avengers movie because that was kind of this big blockbuster. That's number 1.
Yeah.
But
that one's
But out of the solo films, for me, it's Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, and then Incredible Hulk, and okay, you're back. We lost you there for a second, Samurai.
Oh.
Yeah, it cut off and pixelated, and I was like, But yeah, so for me, it would probably be Iron Man is number 1, and it's not even close. Captain America's 2, also not close. And then a bit closer, Thor, Iron Man 2, and then Hulk. That would probably be if I were to rank my 5 Phase 1 films that are not the Avengers, that would be it for the solo movies. But yeah, I love Captain America. I love the character. I've always loved the character. He has been one of my inspirations in comics for a very long time. I love Captain America both as Steve Rogers and as Sam Wilson. So I'm very excited to see what Anthony Mackie and Marvel are going to do with Sam Wilson as Captain America.
Yeah, it's looking good so far. I mean,
yeah,
from what little we've seen.
But it is definitely one of those things where, for me, this is a movie that, in my opinion, perfectly encapsulated the story of Captain America and Steve Rogers, as well as Bucky, And then because, as we've already established, I'm this huge Marvel nerd, um, it set a lot of seeds for later things. Colonel Phillips and Peggy Carter, along with Howard Stark, who also appears in the movie and who we never even talked
Oh
about.
yeah, that was great. Not gonna
Um,
lie.
is Howard and Cap develop a very close friendship, and in fact, part of the reason why Cap was even able to rescue Bucky and the rest of his unit is because Howard flies the plane to get him there.
Yeah.
Along with encouragement from Peggy. Also, a hilarious line where Steve, showing how innocent he is, misunderstands the meaning of the word fondue.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't know if that's innocent or not cultured, but yeah.
A bit of both.
Yeah.
Because he literally asks, so do you two fondue? Like, you know what he's thinking.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, like I feel like at least hindsight wise, like seeing all the movies, I feel like Captain America was like the best to have before Avengers.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. He set the foundation, for sure.
Like you had Iron Man to help kick it off to build the hype.
Yep.
But then at least like Cap was like the good, like solid finisher before that build up.
Yeah, as someone pointed out, like you have to remember too, a little bit of context at the time, because we've talked about this, but like nothing like this had ever been done before. This giant like super team up over the course of multiple movies. There had been like team up movies before. There had been attempts at it. Obviously the X-Men had a huge ensemble cast, right?
Yeah, but that like the first movie was based around that though.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't like a multi-movie build-up where you're taking a whole bunch of separate characters and then you're going to combine them into the Avengers at this point.
Because what the way Marvel did it is it made you feel for every character and get attached, and then they teamed them up. Yep.
Which is kind of the opposite, unfortunately, of what both DC and Sony did, unfortunately.
Correct.
But again, with Cap, it to me, like, this movie is it was exactly what it needed to be. And in hindsight, it's probably not one of the better Marvel movies.
Yeah, like in the whole like upper echelon, maybe not.
But to me, like, especially for Phase 1, it was exactly what it needed to be. And it still holds up really well on rewatches. I've rewatched this movie a couple times, along with Winter Soldier. But, the best part is that this isn't even, like, Cap's best movie. Winter Soldier and Civil War, I think, are both better than this movie.
I agree.
Dude, I love Civil War.
The only thing with Civil War that my only gripe about Civil War is it's not very much a Captain America movie. It feels like another Avengers movie.
Yeah, but
all things considered, I know Cap is still like in the whole like movie making.
Like, but to be fair, Winter Soldier was also like Avengers 1.5 because you had Winter Soldier, you had Nick Fury was heavily involved, you had Black Widow was a guest starring role.
Yeah.
So to be fair, like, they had kind of established that, like, every Cap movie would be kind of this, like, Avengers, like, 1.5 or whatever.
Yeah, I feel Civil War, like, hit it real bad. But at least Cap was still, like, the overall focus.
Yeah, I mean, the whole movie was from his perspective.
Yes.
And we'll talk a lot about Civil War later and, like, how well it was done. And, of course, the involvement of Robert Downey Jr., which was a huge, huge boon to the movie. To give Cap someone to play off of. And, it just, again, Cap, though, to me, again, he is one of the big three of the Avengers, along with Thor and along with Tony. And while Tony, unfortunately, doesn't really get his own solo movie again after Iron Man 3. So Iron Man 3 comes out, I want to say it was like 2012 or 2013. It was the first movie after Avengers.
Yeah.
And he doesn't get his own solo film after that. But he still is all over the MCU.
Correct.
He appears in Spider-Man Homecoming. He appears in Civil War. He also appears in, of course, Avengers Infinity War and in Endgame.
You forgot Age of Ultron.
Age of Ultron, of course.
I mean, at this point, it was like with everyone being like intertwined with everyone else's movies, that seemed
mostly
perfectly fine, huh?
Mostly,
yeah, mostly, yeah. But that seemed perfectly fine because I mean,
It
this
does
Voltron happened because
because of Tony, but
something that Tony did. Yeah.
yeah, but the other thing though too is that, like, as a lot of people pointed out, there's a lot of like Tony's story that was never really explored, and unfortunately we probably will not get to see in the MCU, at least not with Tony at the front. And you know, we'll talk about that a little bit more and like why those decisions were made. But it is kind of one of those things that, one, limited by licensing, and two, unfortunately, you know, they were also limited by the story they were trying to tell, which was, of course, building up to Infinity War with Thanos.
Yeah.
But
And I mean, if you kept going, you risk kind of, well, our biggest franchise is just kind of like falling down in quality at this point.
yeah, I mean that's also true. But like again, you can also say that like because Tony was so heavily involved in so many other Marvel properties, like I think they would have with Kevin Feige's creative genius and Robert Downey's acting chops, I think they easily could have made an Iron Man 4 if they had wanted to. But, you know, again, they had a plan, and we don't have any insight into what that plan is.
Yeah.
But, you know, I can just say that I feel that they should have had probably at least another solo Iron Man film. I don't know why they never pulled the trigger on that, but I'm sure they have a reason. But with that said, though, Cap kind of became, in many ways, kind of the shoulders of MCU storytelling, past phase 2 and beyond, because a lot of like some of the most important events in the MCU happen in his movies. The fall of Shield occurs in Winter Soldier.
Mm-hmm.
Civil War, the dissolution of the Avengers, happens in his movie. And so he is, in many ways, Chris Evans kind of becomes the other Titan, right? Because at this point, Robert Downey has already been established as the face of the MCU, as Tony Stark. But following the end of phase 1, without any real solo Iron Man films, Cap's perspective kind of becomes the central theme for most of the ongoing connected stories, like you were talking about earlier, Samurai.
Yeah.
And
Hello?
yep,
Hello.
That's weird.
yeah, you're still coming through.
That was weird. My thing just kind of weirded out on me.
Okay, but yeah, so for me, like, this was a really good like first step in establishing the kind of person that Steve Rogers is, and that we would see, you know, as he developed.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great showcase of Steve Rogers, you know, being a scrawny boy from Brooklyn, like covering that grenade,
Mm-hmm.
you know, knowing he was gonna die, like, well, assuming it went off,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah,
You know.
the moment that made him worthy, as we will know, in
Mjolnir?
more ways
Oh,
than
for
one.
the-
Yeah, in more ways than one. But of being selected for the super soldier serum.
Yeah, I did like how like Hulk and like a lot of the other MCU is based off trying to recreate this serum.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's just kind of a cool callback. Like even like Bucky,
Yep.
you know,
And
the Winter Soldier is trying to recreate this serum.
yep, and that also plays a role too in a lot of the MCU television projects. One of the first plot lines in Agents of Shield had to do with trying to recreate a super soldier serum
Mhm.
based on Captain America. Coulson, as we will learn in the Avengers, is a huge Captain America fanboy. He collected every single one of his cards, vintage, and he was very proud, according to Black Widow.
Those were found in his locker.
Yep. So that's Fury for you, though. But yeah, it's you know, with Cap though, it really does. I think a lot of people have complained about the MCU not necessarily following comic book lore, and obviously that hasn't been a huge deal because, as we talked about, you know, at the very beginning with Tony and in Iron Man, the goal of a film is not necessarily just to get the hardcores, but you also have to appeal to the general audience.
Yeah.
And I feel with Captain America they did that.
Yeah, no, that's like the problem. Like making these movies, like you need to appeal to the casual person.
Yep.
So you can get that revenue in, because that's 90% of the possible revenue.
Yeah.
You know, as opposed to the hardcores. I also think the easy part, like with making a comic book movie as opposed to like a video game movie or like something based off another IP that's a book, is that comics have so many different storylines they can like mix and mash and
Yep.
and do, or Even if
they
they
can-
kind of make it a little bit different, well, it's just like how they did all the other comics. Like,
Yeah.
it's not as weird doing it to a comic book as opposed to something like a manga or a book which only has like the one possible story.
Yeah, and the multiverse also has a lot of help with that, right? Because what they can say and what the MCU did originally is they established it as a separate canon universe within the Marvel multiverse.
Exactly.
But we won't talk about this now because Miss Marvel kind of dives into this a little bit, and so does Doctor Strange. But that multiverse designation has since switched, much to the chagrin of certain hardcores. But we'll talk about that later, I'm sure.
But yeah, I just think it just lends itself to stray a little bit to make it appeal more.
Yeah, I think so. And the other thing too is that one of the advantages that neither DC nor Fox nor Sony have is they have Kevin Feige and his genius.
Yeah.
And Feige is kind of like, to me, the Dave Filoni of Marvel. And if you're not familiar with Dave Filoni has largely overseen Star Wars. He was a big impact in the Clone Wars animated series, Rebels, and the Bad Batch, just to name a couple. Almost all of which are universally praised by Star Wars fans as like the best Star Wars media that's been released.
Yeah. Oh, so the newer one. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was like Clone Wars, the mini series or the series?
The series that has like the CGI, the 3D models rather.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the miniseries was just 2D hand.
Yeah, it was a 2D. Yeah, hand drawn where they show off how badass Windu is. In that one.
He has a purple lightsaber. That fool's dope.
Yeah, well, unfortunately,
they should cast him as Nick Fury. Goddammit!
Right. Unfortunately, the live action films never really give Mace Windu the due he deserves. You have to watch either the Clone Wars miniseries or you have to watch the Clone Wars animated series.
I forget what game was it, but I played the shit out of Mace Windu in one of the Star Wars games. Was he a playable character?
Was that Jedi Power Battles?
If he's a playable character, it's not at the beginning, I feel, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I'm not sure off the top of my head.
I want to say in episode 3, because they had a versus mode.
Oh yeah, that might have been
in that game, and
yeah,
I beat people blindfolded in that. Adults blindfolded when I was like 12.
Yeah,
they were not happy with me.
Hashtag humble brag.
And I was actually, yeah, I'm pretty sure I was using Mace Windu because he's so OP.
Yeah, but anyway, so basically, like, Feige has this really uncanny knack, kind of like what Filoni has for Star Wars, where Filoni has taken bits and pieces of like the expanded Star Wars universe and has kind of like adapted them into storylines. And he's had a lot of success, and Feige's kind of done the same thing with like the MCU. Is he's done a really good job of like giving hardcores what they want, while also managing to write a story that appeals to the general audience.
Yeah.
And, it's hard to kind of say, like, it's not to say Feige's perfect, looking at you, Inhumans, but,
Ooh, shots fired.
Well,
that must be bad, though, because I haven't watched it.
It's terrible.
I was about to say, did you watch Inhumans?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
No, and... I know you did. I'm talking to Shoshima over here.
No, I haven't watched it.
There's a reason why.
Was it on Hulu, right? Or what was it on?
So
that's another reason why.
Yeah, so it originally, I think, debuted in like IMAX and theaters, and then it was like a 4TV thing, and I don't remember where it debuted, but it might have been ABC. But
it was a mess of a launch.
It was. Let me just put it this way: the Inhumans themselves are not bad characters. There's a lot of controversy with the Inhumans, and we'll talk a lot about that later. But one of the things that I just want to mention real quick is that Inhumans is unequivocally, unquestionably, the worst piece of media ever released directly tied into the MCU. It is hot garbage. And there is...
And that's with Thor 2 existing.
Yes. the Inhumans makes Thor 2 look like a cinematic masterpiece in comparison. It is that bad.
There was that, was the Runaways part of the MCU?
That's
a whole different thing.
I think yes, but it's debatable because kind of like Cloak and Dagger and other like MCU or other Marvel properties, they haven't really been addressed or referenced too much in the greater MCU. So I kind of put it in the same category as like Agents of Shield,
Okay.
where it exists somewhere in the MCU multiverse, but not necessarily in the mainstream
like the
MCU
mainstream
universe that we have been following in the films.
Okay.
So
I just knew that was
and-
a thing.
Yeah. So
I
that again, that's just my opinion. I don't know what Feige says. Feige's word is pretty much law, but yeah.
like the Netflix stuff as well. Like it was there, but
So
and then
the Netflix stuff, and this is going to be minor spoilers for Phase 4. The Netflix stuff has been confirmed canon to the MCU.
I did hear that, and I mean,
and
you kind of see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's again, we won't talk about this a lot because a lot of this is ongoing projects, but I will just tell you this. There is a movie where a cameo is made, and if you haven't seen it yet, you probably all know what I'm talking about, but if you haven't seen it, there's a cameo. It has been confirmed. Same character from the Marvel Netflix series. In Hawkeye, another character from the Netflix series shows up. Same character.
Wow, that took me way too long to think of who that character was.
I'm trying to be deliberately vague. Because
no, I know. I'm just like, I knew the first one. The second one, I'm like, who was possibly there?
We're really jumping ahead here. Like, you know,
Just
our podcast hasn't even made it to Avengers yet. We haven't finished Phase 1, and we've largely avoided talking about Phase 4.
No, you're good. I'm just like,
but
yeah.
So it has been confirmed. Now, how much of that is canon is still up for debate, because there are other main
Iron Fist,
like that one that you know, we're just not certain of. Right, we're not certain of kind of where they fit in and or how. But if Feige says it, then yeah. So a little fun fact too, since we want to take this kind of back to Captain America, because we have been going at this point for almost an hour. With Cap, Cap obviously plays a huge role. His shield plays a big role. He's a symbol. And he is, as I kind of said, he'll be kind of the linchpin, the primary linchpin for a good portion of the rest of the MCU up until Endgame. And even then, the title of Captain America will still live on. Whereas, as we've talked about, Sam Wilson will take up his mantle, but we haven't talked at all about the events or the happenings of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but we will address that at some point in the future. But Cap is a symbol. And it's important to remember that if Marvel hadn't stuck the landing with any of these movies, Hulk, Captain America, Thor, Iron Man, we might never have gotten Avengers, and we might never have gotten the MCU as we know it today. Yeah. And Cap was, in many ways, the final piece of that puzzle.
Yeah.
So, we didn't really talk a whole lot about Cap's comic book history like we traditionally do. But that's because his comic book history is pretty nuts, and honestly, it's a pretty close representation to what you see in the MCU. Cap is the good guy. He is the moral center, the leader of the Avengers. He always does what's right, rather than what's easy. And in many ways, he is the heart and soul of Marvel Comics.
Wasn't there that one storyline where he was part of Hydra or some BS?
Okay, so that is Secret Empire, I believe is what it was called, and Cosmic Cube Shenanigans.
Oh, okay. I had to bring it up because that was a meme for a while.
Yeah. We'll talk. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, a bit more when we cover Winter Soldier, because that's where the meme originated, and I believe Secret Empire was going at around the same time.
Yeah, I want to say it was pretty close, so it fit really well.
We will talk about that, but yes, there was a comic book storyline where they turned Captain America into a secret mole for Hydra through Cosmic Cube Shenanigans, and yeah, good times. Spoiler alert: they wrote themselves into a corner, and after saying we're not going to use Cosmic Cube shenanigans, they solved the problem with Cosmic Cube shenanigans.
What?
So,
Comic books being comic books?
yeah, Secret Empire is one of those where, to me, it had a lot of potential, and then they
Shot themselves in the foot.
I don't want to say they shot themselves in the foot. They wrote themselves into a corner
Okay.
where there wasn't really a way they could get out of it
Without
going back on their word.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate because it's a decent storyline. It has a lot of potential. Evil Captain America, but again, it's
Captain America, but he's evil.
yeah.
I mean, they totally mean that later, but
Yeah. Well, again, I can't speak for all fans, but like for me, I don't think Secret Empire deserves as much of the hate it does. I do think though that the criticism of how they resolved it is extremely valid. And it was extremely arrogant of the writer to basically come out and say, we will not solve this with Cosmic Cube shenanigans. Yeah, it was it was an interesting storyline, let me put it that way. But with that said, we are kind of approaching the 1 hour mark, so let's kind of go into final thoughts on Captain America: The First Avenger and Cap as a member of the MCU. So we'll start with you, Samurai.
Awesome movie. I still vote Steve Rogers to have the worst costume of all of them so far. Granted, the reason why,
Makes total sense, right?
I mean, like he still kind of has that later on, that outfit later on as well, and it's just like everyone's all souped up, and this mofo looks like he's going to a kid's birthday party.
I think they did better with certain Captain America outfits later. But,
Oh yeah,
but definitely for and they reference this in Avengers, right? Like he's a product of his time in the 1940s. It's a bit corny.
yeah.
Or as Rogers puts it, old-fashioned.
And well, I mean, granted, it did look better. Like even the more corny looking like costume did look better once they took the mask off.
Yeah.
So it did get better, but yeah, and it looked like something I could get at like Party City.
All right, so Samurai,
yeah.
not a fan of the spangly outfit, so let's chalk him up to Team Tony on that one.
Yeah, I thought they did a pretty decent job modernizing Captain America personally.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
comparatively speaking to the comics with the like ears, wings, and stuff.
Yeah, no, like I said, later on the costume did get better.
Yeah.
But given the storyline, it's just kind of funny. You have like this whole serious, like action scene and whatnot, and this dude looks like it looks like he just went and got that from Party City or something.
Yeah, I mean, but to be fair, also, like, you got to give him credit. No one is going to mistake him for anyone else on the battlefield.
Yo, man, those guys are stupid. They're gonna be looking for army guys.
Yeah, we dressed up as Peter's dressed up as a clown.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you were referencing with that. All right. So, anything else you want to add, Samurai, or just is that kind of it that you hate his spangly outfit?
Nah, that's pretty much it. Like I said,
Okay.
it was a good movie, great movie. I had fun watching it.
Yeah, there you go. All right, Shoshima, how about you?
I don't know why. I was just remembering right now. Captain America uses a gun in this movie.
He does. Yeah, it's I think one of the only times he does. I think he uses it. He uses the weapon briefly. I think in Avengers. Specifically when they're trying to repair the helicarrier with Stark.
Yeah, maybe.
He pulls the gun and starts firing at some of the Loki's mind control guys, but you don't really see him use a gun. I think any time after that.
Yeah, usually he stays away from firearms in future movies.
Yeah.
Maybe he learns to throw a shield better. Who knows?
Math.
But
it appears to run on some kind of electricity. Well,
Yeah.
you're not wrong.
Yeah. In hindsight, like it is cool, like seeing that the Tesseract was involved. It's knowing now that we know what it is after the first Avengers movie. And but yeah, no, I really liked the movie. I thought it was like a great prequel or whatever. I don't know. No, not pre, but whatever the right term is. Like
Set
the
up
movie
for
before. Yes.
set up for the Avengers. Yeah.
For the Avengers, like, and yeah, it wasn't as good as Iron Man 1, but it was just great to have that and then get thrown into the new Avengers.
Yeah.
The build up we've all been waiting for. But no, I thought it was a great movie. And everyone had pretty good chemistry, even.
Yeah.
Bucky falling off the train, you're like, I think something's gonna happen here, but we'll wait and see.
Comic book fans are like, wait a minute.
Wait a
Only if you remember that scene happened.
Yeah.
No, I knew it happened, and I knew Bucky was a thing, but like I'm not as well versed in the comics,
Yeah.
so I didn't know like how integral he was. But I'm like, we'll see him later.
Yeah. Yeah, and then, I think I've talked about it enough. I love Captain America. This is my second favorite of the Phase 1 MCU films, outside of course, the Avengers, which is, I think, in a league of its own,
Yeah.
for many reasons.
Between nostalgia and just the whole build-up, yes.
But for me, like, Chris Evans, as I said, becomes one of the Titans. Chris Hemsworth stumbled a little bit, but he eventually has found his place as, I think rightfully so, as kind of the new linchpin going into, like, Phase 4, along with, Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange. But it's something for me that, like, with Chris Evans, he was given, I think, as far as, like, character limitations, like, Thor's biggest issue, as we talked about during the Thor pod, was that Thor is a demigod, and he kind of suffers from the Superman problem, just like Hulk does. Captain America, though, is a lot like Iron Man. He's a much more nuanced character, with a lot more, conflicts that are relatable to the average person. And I think they really did a good job of establishing Steve as, this underdog. And, him not being the favorite, to become the super soldier, his asthma getting in the way, basically, having to work his way up and to become Captain America. And the most important thing is kind of like with Tony Stark, who's told, don't waste your life. And that kind of becomes like the recurring theme for Tony, throughout his whole character arc. Steve Rogers is told, stay a good man. And he does that throughout his entire MCU run. And you see that demonstrated time and time again, with the exception of one mistake because of his inexperience with women. And by the way, to all potential young watchers out there, don't do what Steve Rogers did and kiss a random girl when you are clearly interested in somebody else. That's not going to go well. Hopefully, the girl won't shoot bullets at you like Peggy does to Steve in this movie. But just little dating advice for those who are socially awkward. But
Don't
yeah.
kiss a woman with a gun.
Wait, do you have the gun or she has the gun? I'm confused.
Okay, we're getting sidetracked here. So with that said, though, I feel that this movie does a really great job of introducing Captain America. I believe that it is a very good precursor to the Avengers. And, of course, we get introduced to Chris Evans, who, as we talked about, will become one of the two main pillars of the MCU alongside Robert Downey Jr. and then eventually joined by Thor's Chris Hemsworth.
Actually, can I say, like, how well he fits into the role, considering, like, the Johnny Storm is, like, not the opposite, but not the same.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about this before, but, like, I think the first time where I saw Chris Evans play, like, a quote-unquote, like, villainous role after he was cast as Captain America was Knives Out.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really weird to see him playing such an asshole.
Yeah, but Chris Evans does it good. He's just a good actor, though.
He is.
You know?
And that's something that a lot of the actors in the MCU have. We've talked about this a little bit in the rant with, like, DC, but, like, DC's strong point was their casting for a lot of their movies. Same with Fox. Even Sony also had a strong cast.
Yeah.
The MCU, though, not only has a strong cast, but also has good writing behind it, consistently.
Yeah.
With some exceptions.
I just wanted to, just bring up the fact that we saw him in, like, a superhero movie.
Yep.
As a separate character. Like, I don't think Fantastic Four was that long before Captain America.
6 years.
What's that?
The original Fantastic Four debuted in 2005.
Huh.
Yeah.
enough time to forget
Well,
about that.
fuck me.
But then there was also Rise of the Silver Surfer, which came out, I think, in 2007. So it was only like 4 years apart.
Okay.
Really.
But
Like,
either way, like
yeah.
I felt he made a believable Cap like after that,
yeah, absolutely.
and like there was no questions like seeing the two. Speaking of which, fun fact: apparently Dane Cook like auditioned to be Captain America.
Yeah, he did. And he will get blocked on Twitter if you bring that up to him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there are many things that Dane Cook is notorious for blocking people on Twitter over like a lot of silly things, which is kind of funny given that he's a comedian. So you would think he would have a little thicker skin, but no. Apparently, he is notorious for blocking people for bringing up his failures in particular.
That reminds me of I forget the director for Bayonetta though. Like he's infamous for blocking people,
Yeah,
and like so people will like talk to him like I got blocked. Yes.
yeah, yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah, so anyway, the only other thing I kind of wanted to tie in, I want to end with a little fun fact teaser, which several people who have been keeping up with the MCU may appreciate. But we talked about the Howling Commandos, and I already talked about how Nick Fury was the head in the comics. Do you know who was also a member, or at least an ally, of the Howling Commandos? Famous comic book character that Marvel didn't have the rights to at the time?
No.
One Logan, aka Wolverine. A lot of Wolverine's back history, because he's old enough. He was born in the late, I think, 1880s or 1890s. He fought in World War II alongside of Captain America. Unfortunately, at the time of this movie, Fox still had the rights to the mutants, and that included, of course, Wolverine, who's played by Hugh Jackman. But I can imagine that, in an alternate timeline where Marvel still had the rights, we would have seen a Logan cameo in a Captain America film.
That would have been pretty cool, actually.
So
an alternate timeline in where Marvel had the rights. Didn't Disney just buy Fox's movie stuff?
I did mention it was a little bit of a teaser, right? Wink. So, with that being said, I think we're going to wrap up. Thank you both very much for joining me, as always, for talking about Captain America, my personal favorite Marvel superhero, if that wasn't made abundantly clear.
I actually connected with Thor a lot, in the MCU.
Yeah, he's a good one for sure. But with that being said, we will be back again to talk about the Avengers in our next Lost in the MCU episode of the Lost One podcast. But in the meantime, he's Shoshima1016. You can find him at Zachary1016, which you can see directly below him on Twitter. He is SamuraiNoodlez. Again, his Twitter handle is right down below him. I'm Shenzo the Lost. Thank you very much for watching, and we will see you guys next week. Bye-bye!
Okay, bye!
Bye.